The history of faith is not written in abstract theories or dry philosophies. It is written in stories. Stories of ordinary people who, when confronted with overwhelming circumstances, demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for trust in an unseen God. These are the narratives that have anchored the hearts of believers for millennia. They are more than historical accounts. They are living testaments, powerful examples of how faith transforms a life, a challenge, and an entire destiny. Today, in a world that demands instant evidence and constant validation, the lessons embedded in these biblical faith stories are more critical than ever. They serve as a roadmap, guiding us through our own valleys of doubt, fear, and uncertainty. Each character we examine, from the patriarch to the persecuted, stands as a pillar, proving that God responds when his people step out in unwavering belief. They teach us that faith is not passive. It is an active force, a radical choice that often looks foolish to the world but always results in divine vindication. We are going to unpack 9 of the most powerful stories of faith in Scripture. We will move beyond the simple retelling and delve into the timeless principles they offer. The goal is to move these characters from the dusty pages of history into the vivid reality of your current spiritual journey. Because the faith that closed the lions' mouths, that parted the sea, and that brought a man back from persecution to apostleship, is the same faith available to you today. Let's begin this transformative journey, starting with the man whose obedience seemed utterly absurd to his generation. Faith of action, Noah and the ark. Our first example is the faith that acts against all conventional wisdom, Noah. Imagine the scene: a world thriving with humanity, a society engrossed in its own pursuits, and a man, likely in his hundreds, meticulously building a massive wooden vessel, a ship, hundreds of miles from the nearest coastline. This was Noah. God had given him a warning and a command that defied all known logic. A global flood was coming, and he was to build an ark for the salvation of his household and the preservation of all species. The core of Noah's faith lies not in a momentary burst of inspiration, but in sustained, patient, and ridiculed obedience. The earth at that time was likely watered by mist, as Scripture suggests. Rain was an unknown concept. For decades, perhaps 120 years, Noah persevered. Picture the ridicule he endured. His neighbors, his community, perhaps even his extended family, must have viewed him as the village fool, hammering away at an absurdity under a clear, blue sky. Yet Noah kept building. His faith was based on the character of the one who spoke, not the conditions of the environment. He didn't need to understand the hydrology of a world-ending flood. He only needed to believe the promise of a sovereign God. This is the profound lesson of Noah. True faith looks foolish to the world, but it is wise in the sight of God. Noah's obedience wasn't a casual hobby. It was a total redirection of his life, an act of supreme commitment. Hebrews 11:7 recognizes this. By faith Noah, being divinely warned of things not yet seen, moved with godly fear, prepared an ark for the saving of his household. He was moved by godly fear, which is not terror but reverence, a deep conviction that God's word is a greater reality than visible circumstances. For us, Noah's story challenges our modern need for instant gratification and visible proof. Where are you building in your life today based purely on a word from God, even if everyone around you is mocking the effort? Faith like Noah's calls us to a lifetime of consistent commitment, proving that steadfast obedience is the ultimate vehicle for deliverance and destiny. When the rains finally came, his decades of faithful action saved the world. Faith of sacrifice, Abraham and Isaac. From the patient builder, we move to the patriarch whose test remains the quintessential illustration of ultimate trust, Abraham. Abraham's entire life was a journey of faith, but his peak moment is chronicled in Genesis 22, the command to sacrifice his beloved son, Isaac, the son of promise, on Mount Moriah. It was an unimaginable, heart-wrenching instruction that seemed to contradict the very promise God had made, that Isaac would be the father of many nations. This wasn't just a test of obedience, it was a test of priority. Who did Abraham love more? Who did he trust more? The narrative shows no hesitation. He woke early, took the wood and the fire, and journeyed for 3 days. His response to Isaac's innocent question, "Where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" reveals the depth of his belief. "My son, God will provide for himself the lamb." This is not a casual comment. It is a theological declaration spoken in the face of agonizing commitment. Abraham believed, as the writer of Hebrews later confirms, that God was capable of raising Isaac from the dead to keep his promise. His action wasn't reckless. It was rooted in the knowledge of God's character. What do we learn here? First, obedience must precede understanding. Abraham didn't understand the why until the ram appeared in the thicket. He just obeyed the what. Too often, we paralyze our faith journey by waiting for all the answers, all the contingencies, and all the clarity before we take the first step. Abraham teaches us that the highest form of worship is simply complete surrender. Second, the story demonstrates that God tests faith not to break it, but to prove it and perfect it. The willingness to surrender his greatest treasure revealed Abraham's true priorities. In return for his radical trust, God swore a covenant, saying, "By myself I have sworn, because you have done this thing and have not withheld your son, your only son, in blessing I will bless you." Abraham's sacrifice foreshadows the ultimate act of faith, God's sacrifice of his own son. This story stands as a powerful reminder that when we offer our greatest treasure back to God, we are placing it in the hands of the only one capable of restoring it, redeeming it, or replacing it with something infinitely better. Abraham's ultimate test proves that unwavering faith is always rewarded with unwavering provision. Faith of deliverance, Moses and the Red Sea. Next, we witness the faith of deliverance, a moment so spectacular it became the defining miracle of the Old Testament, Moses parting the Red Sea. This story begins not with triumph but with panic. The newly freed Israelites are caught between an impossible natural barrier, the vast, deep Red Sea, and a vengeful, fully armed Egyptian army bearing down on them. The people cried out to Moses, accusing him of leading them to die in the wilderness. Logically, they were trapped. Even Moses' faith, initially hesitant at the burning bush, had to rise to the occasion. His response to the terrified crowd is the epitome of faith in crisis. "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today." He didn't have a plan, he didn't have a strategy meeting, he had a promise. When God commanded Moses, "Tell the children of Israel to go forward," the impossible suddenly became the command. This is crucial. The deliverance didn't begin with a miracle, but with a step of faith. Moses stretched out his hand, and the laws of nature were suspended. A powerful east wind blew all night, not just drying the seabed, but creating walls of water on the left and on the right. This miracle accomplished three things simultaneously. It provided a spectacular escape for the Israelites. It utterly defeated and destroyed their oppressors. And most importantly, it validated God's power and Moses' leadership for all time. The people saw the great work and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. The lesson for us today is profound. Faith makes a path where there is no path. Every believer faces a Red Sea moment, a circumstance that is vast, overwhelming, and seemingly final. It could be financial ruin, a terminal diagnosis, or a relational crisis. Moses' moment teaches us to stop fearing the enemies we see and start trusting the God we don't. We don't need to understand the mechanism of the miracle. We just need to take the command to go forward. When you are caught between the forces of the past and the uncertainty of the future, standing still in trust and moving forward in obedience is the only way to see God's salvation. Faith of courage, David and Goliath. In stark contrast to the massive, generation-spanning miracle of the Exodus, we turn to an intimate confrontation that encapsulates the faith of courage. The shepherd boy David facing the giant Goliath. The Philistine giant Goliath had paralyzed the entire Israeli army, King Saul included, with fear for 40 days. He was a terrifying sight, nearly 10 feet tall, encased in bronze armor and wielding a spear like a weaver's beam. He was conventional military might personified. David was just a youth, a shepherd boy whose primary defense experience was protecting his sheep from lions and bears. When David volunteered, he was mocked, by his own brother, by the king, and by Goliath himself, who cursed him by his gods. Yet David's response is the battle cry of the faithful. You come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin. But I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. David understood a critical truth. The battle's outcome is determined not by the size of the enemy, but by the magnitude of the God who fights for you. His confidence wasn't in his sling, it was in his testimony. His past faithfulness with a lion and a bear was his proof that the same God would deliver him from this uncircumcised Philistine. He rejected Saul's heavy, conventional armor. Instead, he chose 5 smooth stones and his sling, tools that symbolized his reliance on skill, but more importantly, on divine partnership. This act teaches us to reject the world's conventional wisdom when it comes to fighting our spiritual battles. We often try to fit into the world's armor, relying on money, status, or connections, when our true power is found in simple, pure faith. The moment the stone sank into Goliath's forehead, the entire narrative of power shifted. It proved that no giant is too big when God is on your side. Every person has a Goliath, a long-standing addiction, a relentless financial pressure, a deeply entrenched bitterness. David's story tells us to stop hiding in the tent of fear and step onto the field of battle, knowing that our human weakness, coupled with divine strength, is always victorious. The power of a shepherd's faith conquered the strongest warrior of the age. Faith of conviction, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Our focus now shifts to the essential component of faith, conviction, the unbending will to stand for truth, even when facing a death sentence. We look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace. The setting is Babylon, under King Nebuchadnezzar. The king erected a massive golden image and commanded that at the sound of the music, every official, including these 3 Hebrew exiles, must bow down and worship the idol. The consequence for refusal was immediate execution by fire in a superheated furnace. The 3 young men, whose faith was anchored in the laws of their God, the command to worship him alone, stood firm. They were reported, arrested, and brought before the furious king. The king, offering one final chance, asked them if they would bow. Their reply is one of the most powerful declarations of conviction ever recorded. O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. This response is revolutionary. It articulates the non-negotiable nature of their faith. Notice the 2 layers. First, they declare their absolute belief in God's ability to save them. He is able. Second, they declare their commitment even if he chooses not to save them. But if not, this is true conviction. The faithfulness of God is not contingent upon the comfort of their circumstances. Nebuchadnezzar, in a rage, commanded the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual, so hot that the men who threw them in were killed by the flames. But when the king looked into the fire, he was astonished. He saw 4 figures walking around, unbound, unhurt, and the 4th figure is like the Son of God. The king was forced to acknowledge the supremacy of their God. When they emerged, their clothes weren't scorched, their hair wasn't singed, and there wasn't even the smell of smoke on them. The lesson is vital for a generation facing constant pressure to compromise or conform. Faith provides divine immunity from the enemy's weapons. Our job is to stand firm in our conviction. God's job is to either deliver us from the fire or deliver us in the fire. Either way, our commitment results in the glory of God being revealed. Faith of trust, Daniel in the lion's den. Closely related to the story of the furnace is the faith of trust, exemplified by Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was a man of impeccable character, rising to a position of great power in Babylon and then Persia. His excellence, however, aroused the envy of other administrators, who sought a way to destroy him. They found no fault in his work or morality, so they targeted his spiritual discipline. They convinced the king to sign a decree forbidding prayer to any god or man except the king for 30 days, under penalty of being thrown into the lion's den. Daniel knew the decree, he knew the consequence, but the Bible tells us he went back to his house, and with his windows open toward Jerusalem he prayed just as he had done before 3 times a day. His faith was a habit, a consistent, non-negotiable rhythm of connection with God. He didn't hide his faith in a time of crisis, he amplified it. He was immediately reported, arrested, and reluctantly sentenced by King Darius, who deeply respected him. Daniel was cast into the dark pit, and a stone was sealed over the opening. Facing certain, violent death, Daniel rested in absolute trust. The next morning the king rushed to the den and called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to deliver you from the lions?" Daniel's calm voice responded from the darkness, "My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, so that they have not hurt me." The power of this story lies in the profound tranquility of Daniel's trust. He wasn't saved because he prayed. He was saved because of the nature of his relationship with God, demonstrated by his continual prayer. The lions, instruments of death, became protectors, silenced by divine decree. For us, Daniel teaches that unwavering faith guarantees divine protection. When your enemies set traps for you, in the workplace, in your finances, or in your reputation, your greatest defense is not frantic defense, but persistent, public, and private devotion to God. The things meant to destroy you will often become the very stages upon which God proves his power and vindicates your integrity. Faith of loyalty, Ruth's commitment. Not all faith stories involve fire and lions. Sometimes, the most profound acts of faith are those of quiet, relational loyalty. We turn to the story of Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite woman who had married into a Jewish family led by Naomi. After the deaths of her husband, her brother-in-law, and her father-in-law, Ruth was left widowed alongside her mother-in-law, Naomi, in a foreign land. Naomi urged her 2 daughters-in-law to return to their families and gods, knowing life would be easier for them there. One, Orpah, tearfully agreed. Ruth did not. Ruth's declaration to Naomi is one of the most powerful statements of commitment in all of Scripture, a vow of loyalty that transcends culture, family, and comfort. "Entreat me not to leave you, or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God." Ruth's faith journey was a radical act of self-abandonment. She was leaving her known world, her gods, and her security to embrace an unknown future with Naomi and the God of Israel. She had no promise of provision, acceptance, or happiness. She was betting her life on the character of Naomi's God. Her faith was demonstrated in her humility and diligence. She took initiative to provide for them by gleaning leftover grain in the fields, a provision God had established for the poor. This act of humble service, born out of loyalty, led her directly into the field of Boaz, a wealthy kinsman redeemer. Ruth's loyalty eventually led to marriage and a complete redemption of her situation. She, a foreign woman, was grafted into the lineage of David and ultimately into the very ancestry of Jesus Christ. Ruth teaches us that faith is often expressed through faithful choices in relationships. Loyalty to God and to the people He calls us to serve will always open the door to divine providence. When you choose devotion over comfort and commitment over convenience, you position yourself under the wings of the Lord for refuge and reward. Her quiet, sacrificial faith resulted in an eternal legacy. Faith of endurance, Job's perseverance. Perhaps the most difficult, yet essential, facet of faith is endurance in the face of inexplicable suffering. We look at the book of Job. Job was a man of great wealth, integrity, and devotion. In a single day, he lost his livestock, his servants, and all 10 of his children. Soon after, his physical health was stripped away, leaving him covered in painful sores. The catalyst for this suffering was a spiritual contest between God and Satan, a reality of which Job was completely unaware. His friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, came to comfort him but quickly turned into accusers, insisting that his monumental suffering was proof of a hidden sin. Job wrestled with deep questions of justice and the nature of God, never denying God's existence, but agonizing over his methods. It is in this pit of despair, stripped of everything, including the comfort of his wife's advice to curse God and die, that Job makes his most powerful declaration. Even when he couldn't see the reason, and even when the pain was unbearable, he cried out, "Though he slay me, yet will I trust him." This is the essence of mature faith. It is faith that holds on to God's character when the circumstances seem to contradict his goodness. Job models a faith that is not a transaction, where good behavior results in blessings, but a relationship, where loyalty prevails even in loss. He never received a tidy explanation for the suffering, but he received something far better, a profound revelation of God's sovereignty and wisdom in a whirlwind. After enduring the trial and interceding for his accusatory friends, Job was restored. The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. The material blessings were doubled, and he received new children. He lived 140 more years, seeing 4 generations of his descendants. Job's story is the definitive answer to the question of suffering. Authentic faith perseveres because it trusts the restorer more than it fears the loss. When your life seems to be falling apart, and when those closest to you are offering simplistic explanations, Job teaches us to hold fast to the conviction that the purposes of God extend far beyond our current pain, and his restoration will ultimately exceed our losses. Faith of transformation, Paul and the road to Damascus. Our final journey of faith is perhaps the most radical demonstration of God's power to completely redirect a life. The transformation of Saul, who became Paul. Paul, initially known as Saul of Tarsus, was an enemy of the early church, a zealous Pharisee who actively pursued, imprisoned, and consented to the death of Christians, including the first martyr, Stephen. He was not a seeker, he was a persecutor. His life changed forever on the road to Damascus. While traveling there to arrest more believers, a blinding light from heaven struck him down. He heard the voice of Jesus Christ saying, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" In a moment of divine intervention, a zealot was turned into a disciple, a persecutor into a preacher, and a murderer into a missionary. The experience left him physically blind for 3 days, a symbol of the spiritual blindness that had defined his former life. His conversion was total, immediate, and utterly life-altering. Paul's subsequent life became a relentless testament to his transformative faith. He endured shipwrecks, beatings, imprisonment, poverty, and constant opposition. Yet he wrote nearly half of the New Testament, laying the theological foundation for Christianity. He was driven by one single motive: to know Christ and to make him known. This story teaches us 2 powerful truths. First, no person is beyond the reach of divine transformation. Regardless of your past failures, mistakes, or even opposition to God, His grace is powerful enough to not only forgive, but to redirect your energy and passion toward His purpose. Second, Paul's life shows that faith redirects destiny. His immense energy, once devoted to destruction, was consecrated to the spread of the gospel. He proved that faith doesn't just change your beliefs, it fundamentally changes your identity, your purpose, and your future. The vessel of persecution became the vessel of the gospel. Your story of faith. We have traversed centuries, from the dawn of creation with Noah to the establishment of the early church with Paul. We have seen faith in action with Abraham, faith in the impossible with Moses, courage with David, conviction with the three Hebrew young men, and endurance with Job. What is the common thread running through all these narratives? It is this: faith is the response of a yielded heart to the instruction of a faithful God. These stories are not meant to be admired from a distance. They are meant to be emulated in the marketplace, in the hospital, and in your home today. The same God who shut the lions' mouths remains faithful today. The power that divided the Red Sea is still capable of making a way for you. When you face your own personal Goliath, remember David's sling. Your weapon is your relationship with God. When the world tries to force you to bow, remember the smell of smoke on the three young men. Faith ensures your integrity remains untouched. Your own spiritual journey is being written right now. It is a potential faith story for generations to come. Will you choose to act when logic dictates otherwise? Will you trust when the odds are stacked against you? Will you endure when the suffering is inexplicable? Let the lives of these ancient heroes move you to step forward with courage. Recognize that your struggles are not random. They are often the very tests designed to produce that unwavering faith that the Bible calls precious. Let these stories be the fuel that drives your obedience, anchors your trust, and makes your life, too, a powerful, living testament to the faithfulness of God.